with wars taking place in the 21st century, media victories sometimes are more important than than actual military victories. And we've had a recent media victory for President Putin. He claimed to have been targeted by 91 Ukrainian drones, long-range drones, at his Novgorod residence. So anyway, how President Zelenskyy or his military would have known that President Putin was at his residence, that's hard to say. But apparently it is a state secret where the president is at any one time. So this is all very interesting because President Trump spoke to President Putin. Some believe that there are Ukrainian spies within the Trump administration providing information to the Ukrainians to target President Putin. So all this is conjecture, but anyway, this pushes us in a totally new direction. And this is a great way, if you're Russia, this is a great way to end 2025 after taking so much territory, after now breaking out of, pretty static front lines. And we now finish the year with a big media victory. Zelenskyy now looks more and more kind of like a terrorist. President Putin is looking more like a hero. So these are the media victories that countries need to win because the support of the international community is so important. And this also puts President Zelenskyy on the back foot. So you have a picture here from Deutsche Welle, President Zelenskyy, pensive, thinking, what can I do now? How can I finish 2025 on a high after this media victory by Russia? So anyway, we move on here to this article from the Russian news agency TASS about the global reaction to Kiev's attack on President Putin's residence. So we have international reaction. We have President Trump, very angry. China, don't escalate. India, India's leader Modi voiced concerns. UAE condemned the attack. And I thought the UAE was good buddies with Zelenskyy. I even thought that possibly Zelenskyy had some of his money hidden away there at a UAE bank. So why would they go and condemn that attack? So this seems like a very good indication of the media victory that President Putin was looking for. They could have just stayed silent about this attack. They could have just said, okay, we took out all the long-range drones. No worries, no one hurt. But this was the media victory that President Putin was looking for. Thank you very much, President Zelenskyy. And of course, the Ukrainians don't agree that this attack ever took place. But the important thing is, this isn't about truth or falsehood. This is about media victory. Once a news story gets out in the news and gets repeated 20 times, 50 times, 100 times, it kind of gets ingrained in people's mind that one leader is not such a good person. The other leader is a much better person than they thought that person was. And we have support for Putin from a leader of a French party, the Patriots. Of course, we have support from Nicaragua. Abkhazian president condemned the strike. Abkhazia, I believe, is that Georgia breakaway region that is under Russian protection. So anyway, we have a former Ukrainian prime minister attacking Zelenskyy and saying he's going about doing pointless babbling. And we have a former member of the an actual member of the Ukraine's parliament who had to leave the country, calling Zelenskyy a terrorist. So we even have support for Putin within Ukrainian circles. So surprise, surprise, media victories go a long way. And of course, we have strong Russian reaction. Maria Zakharova, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman, the Russian Security Council deputy chairman, Dmitry Medvedev, always has strong words for President Zelenskyy. I won't repeat them. So here's a repeat of what happened in the attack. The supposed attack, 91 long-range combat drones sent towards President Putin's state residence in the Novgorod region. And then President Putin called Trump. Why would President Putin call Trump and tell him about that right away? So it's strange that the attack on President Putin's residence, if it took place, happened right after the phone call between President Putin and President Trump. So is this President Putin suggesting to Trump that he has a Ukrainian spy in his administration? Or possibly someone like Marco Rubio could have passed the information along. Maybe, I don't know how much information to intelligence retired General Kellogg has. There are many strong Ukrainian supporters within the Trump administration. So this is basically President Putin signaling to President Trump and to Ukraine that 2026 will not be a good year for Ukraine militarily or regarding the territorial loss. So, there's hidden signals behind the overt and clearly communicated signals. And we have this article here from Al Jazeera, and have Russian claims of Ukraine attack on Putin home ended hopes for peace. So here's an image of President Vladimir Putin. And so it mentions about possible retaliation. But the important thing comes below here. This gives a little bit more information about the attack. The Russian Ministry of Defense said 49 of the drones were shot down over the Bryansk region. So the Bryansk region is close to Ukraine. How would you know if a drone is crossing through Bryansk region that it was actually going towards President Putin's residence? There's ways to find out, I'm sure. So, and we have Sergei Lavrov, who's usually quite measured in his tone, says such reckless actions will not go unanswered. And he says the targets for the retaliatory strikes and the timing of their implementation by the Russian armed forces have been determined. So already we know that there will be a reaction and the targets have been selected. Okay, Medvedev put a comment in there which I will not repeat. So the important part is coming down below here. So we have the comment from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on X. Russia is at it again, using dangerous statements to undermine all achievements of our shared diplomatic efforts with President Trump's team. We keep working together to bring peace closer. This alleged residence strike story is a complete fabrication intended to justify it. Well, I won't go on with that. But anyway, the point is, President Zelenskyy already lost the media fight on this one. He was possibly quite slow to get this story out, to say that he wasn't behind this, that it never happened. Of course, drones are crossing the Russia-Ukraine border all the time, going in both directions. So again, if this was an attempt on President Putin's residence, President Zelenskyy had to get ahead of this a little bit faster, especially since during his Christmas address he said the one thing he hoped for on Christmas was for the death of President Putin. So this kind of, collaborates that, that the fact that he said that he wants President Putin dead, and then you have this supposed attack on President Putin's residence. So we have President Trump's reaction again here, a little bit more detailed. It's one thing to be offensive, it's another thing to attack his house. It's not the right time to do that. And I learned about it from President Putin today. I was very angry about it. So this really is a big setback. No matter what people say, this is a big setback. And it's a media victory for Russia. You have to say that no one expected this report to come out. It kind of caught Ukraine off guard. They didn't react well. They didn't react quickly. And as you know, there's rules in the special military operation. Russia cannot target the leadership of Ukraine. But this could be certainly a justification within the Russian camp that they can now change the rules of engagement. So, but of course, within the United States, there's a lot of pushback, even from President Trump's own party. He said President Trump and his team should get the facts first before assuming blame. Putin is a well-known, bold-faced liar. Well, there's a lot of liars in this whole conflict, in a lot of capitals. So, anyway, this is also, President Trump had a much better reaction than President Zelenskyy. President Zelenskyy could have said, well, if there was an attack, it wasn't on my orders, and I will order an investigation immediately. You could have said that. So just getting here to the end of the article, here's more comments. Even from Pakistan, we got a comment condemning the attack. So this is just media victory 101. How do you get a media victory? You do this, and you don't know whether it happened or didn't happen. Russia says that they have done all their military investigation, and they are convinced that this attack, these drones that crossed the border, were heading towards Putin's residence. And so that's pretty much it about this whole scenario. And in the end, if Russia changes the rules of engagement and begins to focus more on the military and less on talking, this benefits Russia, because this gives them a clean victory, not a negotiated one. If you had a negotiated victory, then you're not able to clear cities of the elements that you don't want there. So as Russia advances, it's able to clear the whole city, and start setting up the conquered cities, from zero, from scratch. And if it's a negotiated, you have to go in there, and it's much messier. So anyway, this benefits Russia much more, and I think this is a very intelligent thing that the Russians did. Of course, President Zelenskyy has had his media victories, and we go back and forth between media victory on either side. But as far as the peace process, this doesn't help or hurt, because the peace process really doesn't exist. It's just a lot of hot air being, spread in the capitals of different countries, and all these talks, all these attempts at peace have gotten us really nowhere. Russia is more on more anchored to its goals of the special military operation. In fact, it may up its goals for 2026 because they're starting to get to reach the areas that they set to end this conflict in a negotiated settlement. So they're just going to keep going until Kiev gives up. So this benefits Russia the most. So you get a media victory, Russia gets to up the game, and 2026 we will see new goals, I think, for the special military operation. Now, Zelensky's on the back foot. He's going to have to think of how he can react to kind of restart a new media victory for himself. So he'll have to do something big, like they'll have to retake a city like Kupiansk, or let's say Guliapole. Guliapole looks to be now in the rearview mirror for the Russians, so I really doubt it. Those front lines are collapsing. Orikhiv is another important anchor city, but it worked in tandem with Guliapole, so Orikhiv should also collapse soon, and then the Russians will be heading towards Zaporizhia. So now Zelenskyy is in a real bind because Zaporizhia is a very important city on the Dnieper River, and it's a city of, before the conflict was 1 million people, an important industrial hub. So now if in 2026, in the start of it or near the start of it, Russia gets out to the outskirts of Zaporizhia, then now that's a huge loss. That's like Russia, getting to Kharkiv. So, and we see that Russia is also moving in that direction as well. The front lines are getting more and more stretched for Ukraine. They're starting to get confused as to what their priorities are, what they want to do in 2026. This is not the way you want to start the year. So the Ukrainians need to figure out what their priorities are, where they want to put their forces, because they're now starting to be overrun in several areas, and this could lead to the Russian military getting up to speed. So anyway, 2026 will be a big year of a lot of changes. We can expect more, probably a media victory for Ukraine coming up soon. Of course, they got the UK thinking hard on what they can do to get a media victory for their friend President Zelenskyy, and we'll see whether they have any success doing that or not. But Zelenskyy is on the back foot, and he doesn't want to finish 2025, in that condition. So we should see some response before the end of the year, and we'll see if he can pull something off. I don't know. I think it's kind of late for that. So anyway, if you like this video, please hit the like button, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you joining me for this video. I think the important thing in any report is to try to seek the truth, not to invent a story. So I always try to look at both sides and figure out where the truth is. It's sometimes hard to figure out, but in this case, the truth is that there was a media victory by Russia. You have to admit it, even if you hate President Putin's guts. You have to admit that this was a very savvy move on their part, and this has put Zelenskyy on the back foot, especially as many of his frontline cities and defensive lines are collapsing. This is not a good way to finish 2025. So we can expect from President Zelenskyy some severe response in some way to try to create a media victory, and we'll see what that is. Anyway, thank you for joining me, and I wish you all the best. If this is the last video you watch of mine before the end of the year, Happy New Year, and I hope that 2026 is a better year for you than 2025, and I hope everything looks up in your life. And for all my subscribers, thank you for your support during this year, and please also share with your contacts so this channel can grow. Thank you very much for joining me today, and have a good day. Bye-bye.